We would like to warn you that this episode we discuss our mental health journeys. Suicide is mentioned. Therefore, this episode may not be suitable for all listeners. Please see our show notes for resources if this is triggering for you.
And when I actually use some escalators, which is very rare, but when I do, I'm like, yay, fuck me, I've used an escalator. It's fantastic, Most people just go up an escalator and just go, oh, it's an escalator. I'm just like, hey, party at the top. I've got off this thing and it hasn't chewed my feet up, and I stood upright all the way.
Give me some notes next time, and I'll stand at the top with some pom-poms.
Oh, please do. Let's do that.
So welcome to this episode of the podcast, the Full Stop podcast. But this month we are talking about mental health and all things to do with how we can support ourselves, really. I think, talking from my own experience, and I know that Berenice and Michael have sort of mentioned it in passing, we've all had brushes with mental health, I think we can euphemistically say, can't we? So, who wants to start then by talking about mental health? Not the cheeriest subject, but I think it does need to be talked about. I think I see it time and time again in our community, people struggling with the enormity of not being able to have the family they wanted. Who wants to go first?
We're all sitting here looking at each other for the benefit of the audience. Oh, Sarah, keep talking. It's a really, really tricky subject, and I think it's one that we kept saying we need to do an episode about mental health, because every episode we've done really in some way touches on that, but we've been very cautious about it, even if we may have been more public about it on our blogs. I think that's probably fair to say. And it affects us all in so many dramatic ways. And one of the things that I've always said about the podcast is kind of the area of mental health expertise lies very much with you, Sarah. I do the techie bit, so I feel very unqualified to talk about it. But in terms of experiences of mental health, then yes. I mean, my story is failed IVF, miscarriages. So I've had a lot of issues with that in my family, but also me personally. And I know that of course I know I've been through counselling. I've been through counselling a lot. I've been through medication. I've also found ways to cope. So I think with IVF, then there's an absolute fear and phobia of different things. There's roads I won't drive down anymore because they go to the clinic. It's quite hard because I went to Bourne Hall. I live in Cambridge. It's just not far away from where I live. I do have reasons to go that direction, but it's bloody hard to do it. And I have to be very careful when I do stuff like that. Let's go to anniversaries. My life is littered with them. We spoke earlier on before we started recording, and I have anniversaries last week. It's also raining here torrentially. I just realised it's raining. If you hear rain fall in the back of this podcast, then it's not atmospheric stuff that Michael's been adding. It's rain. And I think times of the year are more triggering as well. I have issues with that too. So my biggest kind of problem that I ever had with mental health was worthlessness and feeling very unworthy. So after the IVF ended, and we made a kind of unconscious decision because I have dyspraxia. And if you look at World Childless Week diversity video that Jodie Day recorded, you will hear Meriel talking about this as well. And mine's very, very low functioning. Doesn't affect me a great deal, but I know I struggle an awful lot with balance. I always struggled with things like PE at school, stuff like that. And I was always really worried that any child of mine would have to go through the same thing. And I kind of hoped and prayed that they wouldn't ever go through that. It wouldn't be a thing that they'd have to do. And that was kind of part of the reason why we ended IVF, because the diagnosis for that for me came roughly at the same time. So I had this whammy of, okay, this thing that I have is never going to change. I'm not going to get better. I'm not suddenly going to get better at going on escalators. I'm not going to have a miracle thing that's going to happen to me. It isn't going to be like that. So it was quite devastating, the whole thing. And we went on holiday one March, not best time to go away. It was very bleak. It was a birthday month for me. I struggle with birthdays because the more I get older, the further I get from, you know, that whole kind of magic kind of time when you're meant to be more fertile. I know I can't have children naturally, but, you know, whatever. It still feels just one of those difficult situations. And I woke up one morning about 3 a.m. and thought, I can't do this. I can't live this life anymore. I absolutely don't want to live this life anymore. And I was going through a really bad time at work as well. Somebody was being, I would say I'm going to say a bully. I don't get bullied. I've never got bullied at school, never been in a position at work. I used to work with someone who's ex-Fleet Street, who used to use fuck as an inspirational kind of word. I've worked in some really difficult situations and I've got through it fine. I give as good as I get, really, and try and find ways to get around things. But this situation was hard because nobody else seemed to know about it. Nobody else seemed to care, and everyone thought this person was great. They were senior to me, and they were pathologically jealous, I think, probably with me having a master's degree. It's the first time I've ever kind of encountered that too. I used to get a lot of jibes about that. So the whole thing kind of escalated. And at 3 a.m. in Norfolk, I decided that was it. I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. And I remember getting dressed. I don't know quite why one gets dressed to kind of walk off a cliff, but I decided I would get dressed. I remember quite vividly doing that. I'm walking down the stairs and thinking, well, do I take the car? Do I take a car for this? I don't quite know what to do. I could just walk across the field. And I thought, well, I can't really walk across the field. It's muddy. I have dyspraxia. I'll fall over. It won't work. Well, these stupid things that go through your head, but they're all kind of this thing of like, well, I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do it, and I can't, and I can't, and I can't, and I can't, and I can't. And in this kind of process of thinking all of this through, the dog, my dog Molly, this is going to seem it's going to break me because I haven't cried on the podcast so far, but this is really hard. But my dog Molly got out of bed because she sleeps on the bed, came and found me, and I thought, I can't do it. I can't leave this dog. I cannot leave the dog. You know, I thought my husband would be better off. I thought he would be fine because he actually doesn't need all this shit from me, and I'm just a hopeless person. He doesn't need this. He just doesn't need me doing this. And then this dog, I thought, well, she does need me because we've done all this stuff together. You know, we'd done a scent work course. We got up and done scent work. Which I love. You know, you put cheese in boxes and bits of socks and stuff, and you go around and you do stuff. And I met all these people who also, I coincidentally happen to not have children. Through training classes and all sorts of stuff like that. And I thought, I can't do it. And I can remember sitting there in the conservatory of this house, and it wasn't our house. And I thought, I've got to sort this out. I've got to sort this shit out. Somehow I have to sort this out, and I don't know how to I don't know where to start. Didn't know where to start. And to cut really, really long and painful story short, and I made a video about it when I'm feeling a bit more kind of, I don't know, maybe it's its own sort of episode, probably its own episode, I don't know. But I found several things helped. One was I was in the fortunate position, or I am in the fortunate position, where I decided I had to stop working full time. I couldn't cope with this thing. I'd done this master's degree, and I'm still probably partly in this position where I was no chance of promotion where I was. The people that I work with had been through the IVF with me, but I still feel slightly, little bit like I'm sort of bracketed somewhere, or there's a kind of like I have this thing where I don't know, I'm not going to be promoted. I'm not going to be this sort of person that can run things, because I don't know, I'm not seen as that, even though I've done that before. I've run teams before and I've done it very successfully. There wasn't that opportunity, and that was impacting on how I felt myself for being worthy. I wasn't using my master's degree. That basically was also a thing that helped me save my life. Design saved my life. I save that often because I think it did, along with the dog. Probably a bit myself. I've saved myself somewhere along the line, but I went to counselling. I found a fantastic counsellor who helped me through stuff. And it was the chairs in our living room as well that were also a thing. This sounds bonkers, But somewhere along the line, you have to kind of think, okay, there is shit I can take hold of here and I can deal with it. And it was these wretched down chairs, because I had intralipid infusions during my IVF. So I sat in the chairs in our living room, and nurse comes to your house and they do this in transfusion. And these chairs were still in our house, despite it all going wrong. And I couldn't sit in them without feeling ill. Every time I sat in them, I felt ill. And I could barely, when I had this revelation in counselling, I couldn't get the words together. I couldn't get the words together that I could, these chairs, I couldn't deal with the fucking chairs. It's so stupid. I really couldn't. And then I just somehow cried all these words out to my husband. He said, oh, we'll just get rid of the damn, we can go tomorrow. You sit on the floor. We sit on the floor. It's fine. We get rid of the chairs. So the chairs literally went within the week. We had nothing else to sit on. We had one sofa that we all sort of sat there in this kind of little row with the dog, sat on this sofa. But then we got some temporary chairs. Then we got another sofa, and it's all, you know, decorated room, and that helped. I work job share. I work part-time. The rest of the time running my business, which I'm developing and growing, which has helped a lot. And I've met some amazing people. I've had some tricky situations with people judging me because I don't think I can do the job that I do because I'm not a parent, because they're doing a children's book, which is interesting. But I realised that I don't need them anyway. They're not the kind of clients I want. I've worked for lots of people who need help in our community. I've worked with Leslie Pine, I've done some stuff with her, and lots of people that I've done design work with, and of course World Charter Speaks design work as well, and the stuff for the podcast. I've also found meditation to be hugely important, absolutely 100% critical to what I do, and also a thing I do called Project Me, which is about healthy eating. It's about exercise, nothing dramatic. It's just kind of, adulting. I want to kind of say it's adulting, because I thought, oh, I ought to do these things, and I ought to do this, and I ought to do that. And I just like, no, I don't want to do those things. I want to paint my house this color. I want to get rid of the chairs. I want to eat in this particular way with no apologies for that. And I want to live a particular life. I'm plastic free. I try to eat a healthy food. I don't fly. I have a thing that I do, but most of all, critically to all of this, is my dog, my rescue dog. And she's a rescue dog because rescue is important to me, and that's always what I wanted. And just her, training her, walking her, being with her, and having a shared responsibility has helped a lot. It's not for everybody. Not everyone can have a dog. I have to say a big disclaimer: don't go out and just get a dog because I've said that they help your life. That's not necessarily the case. There are other ways you can do that. There's charity work. All rescue shelters need dog walkers. They all need them. Desperately need a dog walker. Go and walk a dog at a rescue shelter. Go and look up the Cinnamon Trust if you're in the UK. Don't just get a dog. But I think it helps to have a connection with something else with a heartbeat that's not another human being, that's a bit kind of non-judgmental. Because had Molly not stood at the top of the stairs in a family that morning, I don't know that I'd be here talking to you. I genuinely don't think I would have been. I was that set, that I was that unworthy. And that's my mental health thing. And that's a very, very, very short and brief kind of way of saying this is how I got out of it. But a lot of it has been about conversation. It's about talking about it. It's about checking up on each other. One of the things that we do as presenters is we will check up on each other via messenger. Lowest times, I always know that you two are there. That to me is absolutely, completely priceless support, because there are days when I just think I can't do this anymore. I still blip. I nearly blipped last week. I had to carry on with my life knowing that it was 10 years since I last had a scan for a pregnancy. And 10 years, oh, 10 years, I should be over it by now. And I'm not. I sort of know that date, and I still know that anniversary. And I always will do. So that's my mental health story.
Wow. Packs a punch.
I think you put I'm very good at doing the iceberg. You shared that a couple of weeks ago, and I think Meriel has shared it, a few other people have shared it in our community, where you're kind of like, calm, lovely, okay, I'm fine. And actually sometimes it's just all a bit kind of rubbish. I went to work a couple of weeks ago, and I know that I was kind of, you happened both to be there on Messenger, because I was like, shit, I'm in an office and there's a baby come in, and actually what I'd asked for in any workplace, and I'm sure we'll cover this more in our episode next year about work, but these are the things I'd like to do, this is kind of the parameters I've got, and this is what I'd like to talk about. I'd like this to be this is my kind of zone of control, if you like, and that had been breached, and that upset me more than any child in the office. But it's that lack of kind of care sometimes people give, or that people don't think that you're as fragile as you are. But often, because we don't talk about our mental health, because we can keep it so inside, and especially in public places, and I certainly do it with my family, my friends that I've met since all of this know more about my mental health than my family do, because I don't want to upset them. I don't want them to feel that they have a nose to kind of look out for me, or actually worse, to pity me for some reason, because pity is the worst thing. It's not about pity. And that's the thing that I think is great in our communities. We don't pity each other. It's listening and understanding, and not necessarily understanding, but empathizing perhaps with whatever route you've come to childlessness, not by choice, as you have a shared responsibility, a shared way around it. There's a shared empathy there that if you don't, not part of that community, that's really hard to kind of tackle. And I think that's where the misjudgment can come along, and that's where we can feel hurt, really hurt.
Yeah, it's not a pity party. And
No.
Right, I think people that are not part of the community don't get that.
No, they don't.
It's the look you get, that pity party look, and you just think, oh, piss off.
Yeah, the sideways head tilt.
Yeah, oh, poor you. It's like, no, I don't want that. I just want you to understand.
Yeah.
And accept.
You're so brave. And then they start talking about their own children, and you think, no, it's not quite like that, really, is it? Michael, you've been very quiet, my darling. You're still on mute. Come off mute.
One thing I want to say.
Quickly. I wasn't looking at you when I was talking.
I love your dog.
She'd love you. She'd climb on your lap, lick your face and everything.
Because I'm so happy that she changed your mind, because you brighten my day.
Bless you. Thank you.
And I know I can speak for Vicky and say that you do the same for her. I
always look forward to seeing your posts, and I think one of the most amazing things about the podcast is that the strangest thing is that Sarah has only met, I'm the only person out of the three of us that's met all of us. And I think that when you meet people that you can talk honestly to about mental health, it's odd, because we're sitting here, the three of us, and I can see both your faces, and this is so hard. I can stop your videos, because it's really hard. This is the toughest podcast that we have done, because everything else that we've done has involved a guest, and we do have a guest, of course. We have lovely Meriel talking to us, talking to you two, and we talk about kind of distant things, but to talk about your own story and to kind of deal with that. And this is the first time I've talked about this. I've touched on it briefly, on walking our shoes a bit, but I've never re-articulated it or said it as words. It's the first time I said it out loud and said, look, actually, I don't like to say the word. It's too big a word, the S word. I don't think I can say it, but I genuinely thought that, I only term it as walk off a cliff. I can't say that word. Can't say it. I won't say it, because I don't want to say it. And I'm not always without, I still blip. I have blips. I have days. It happens. But the difference between then and now is that the person that it's caused me problems at work isn't there. I have coping tools, but also I have friends. I wasn't blipping when that chart came in the office, but I knew it was hard. I tell you what was interesting is I walked out of the building that day, and I sat for a bit and then sat there and bawled my eyes out, because actually it felt lonely. I felt ridiculously lonely. And then a friend of mine, who's a parent herself, who I've known for a long time, said, "Where the hell are you?" And I said, "I'm outside having a cry because of this." And she came out immediately, and she's a mum of 2 teenagers. And what she said was that you think that because there's 5 pregnancies in this workplace that I go to for 2-3 days a week. So I do get a break from it. It's not, I'm very much aware that there are other people out there who are listening to this who go in every day and have to deal with this shit. It's just ridiculous. It's just so unrelentingly And this woman came out, so you'd think it was the only pregnancy in the universe. It's so introverted and so all about them and what they're doing. And she said, and they don't know half of what you've been through, but what you've been through and how you're dealing with it is absolutely amazing. And she just sat with me, and I know that she's there now. And I think that's really important, that you have a friendship circle. You have somebody out there, whoever it is. It can be one of us. If you are sitting there right now and you're thinking, but I don't have that person in my life who can help me with those things, then that's also what we're here for. I'm not saying that any of us are particularly going to offer you the best advice in the world, but actually just going onto Messenger, going into somewhere and going, look, actually, this is just bloody awful. Can you listen? You need someone like that, because that's what I felt was overwhelming loneliness, because, as you yourself, Michael, know, it's different for men, it's different for women. And for us, for my husband and I, it's been hard. It's been really hard, because it's for him. It's it's children would have been the icing on the cake. He's older than me. It would have been a benefit. I'm just looking. Sarah's screen is popped up, and there's her cat's tail waving across the screen. It's quite distracting, but actually hilariously funny. Animal themes are popping up here. Anyway, but yeah, it's not easy in marriages and partnerships as well. Regardless of gender, regardless of there's a lot I think I hear about. If you're single, it's hard. If you're married, it's hard. It's hard all round. It's difficult, and sometimes the person who you are with isn't always the person that is the best person to speak to, because sometimes you can't find the words. I've struggled so hard to find and articulate my grief. Really hard.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think that's you talked about it before. That iceberg thing that I put out was basically trying to find the words, because the mask, we all got it, I think. And I think this episode, we're all gone, the mask is gone, isn't it? It's just like, talking about this stuff is just fucking hard. But it's the emotions behind it. I've sat in silence, because it's like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know how to describe what I'm feeling. So my husband, bless him, has just started processing this stuff, and I'm sort of, I wouldn't say I'm streaks ahead, because I blip like you do all the time. Only takes, I don't know, I was talking about this the other day, sometimes going shopping can be like running the gauntlet, because you're like, right, how many triggers am I going to have fired at me today just to go and get, I don't know, something like a loaf of bread? Because they are always there. You can't avoid families, you can't avoid pregnancies, you can't avoid children, and it's just the relentlessness of it. And I try to explain it to people that aren't part of this community. It's not like I guess for me, it's a complicated grief. It's not you've lost somebody, therefore you grieve, and then you kind of get better. It's different to that. It's a different quality to it, because it's your individual dream. It's you haven't been able to share the exact dream that's been going through your head about what your family would have been like, and so you're doing it on your own. It's not that you can share or reminisce, or I don't know, I guess sort of process it by talking, because you can't, because it's your own experience. And I guess
Oh, this is going to be a tough episode, isn't it?
It's going to be a really, really hard episode. We are all having a very emotional time recording this. I'm trying very hard not to go because, but then maybe that's kind of what it is. It's hard.
Yeah, most definitely. I listening to what you said, Berenice, about how it's different for males, and well, I'll talk from my experience about males and females.
Yeah.
I've never felt that worthlessness. That's not been something I know Vicky has felt that. But I've for me, it's not been like that. And I'd be really interested to hear any other guys' opinions about what I'm going to say. I guess the mental health issue for me is a wearing down of my resilience, if that makes sense. So, as I've said in the past, and that video I did for World Childless Week, where I had to be strong for the both of us. That's what I believed needed to happen. I'm not saying that's the right thing, not saying it's the correct thing, but that's what I believed. And so to do that, you have to, I guess, put the armor on and soldier on. But I now realise, and I was only talking to Vicky today about this, is that mental energy that you spend trying to protect yourself so you can be that rock eventually erodes away. And I can tell you now that I'm on medication for anxiety. It's not, and this is about my personal opinion. It took a lot of coaxing by the doctor to convince me to take it, because I was brought up in a household where my mother lost her father when she was 4. He was only in his mid-20s. He was 25. He got killed in the Second World War. So, post-war years, there was my nan, my mum, and her sister, and they just had to get on. And they have this unbelievable attitude about you just got to get on. And so I have that, but unfortunately, it doesn't last forever. So now I find myself stress sends me into an anxiety attack. It's the weirdest thing. This concrete footing that we've put down today, I've been putting it off for weeks because I kept thinking about it, and I know how much work is involved, and I know it's going to hurt because I'm overweight, and I can't do things comfortably that are at ground level or below. And it started off this, continually thinking about it, and it turns from stress into anxiety. And it just blows my mind because I've never been that person. So where am I going with this? If we were able to sort of say what the difference is, that's my story says it's a wearing down of my mental capacity, if you will. So I find myself having to really push myself to do certain things, and that's where, because I might have been guilty of how do I put this? I might have been guilty of using that philosophy on other people, that you've got to push yourself through. You've got to push yourself through to desensitize yourself and to gain that resilience. And now I'm on the other end of the stick, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this. I did write down some notes, but yeah, look, all I can say is that I too suffer mental health issues. It manifests itself in weight and how I perceive myself. This time of year is not good for us as well, because Vicky's birthday is in August, and that was probably 12 years ago that she was told that IVF worked. And then Father's Day, which is a different time of year for us here, about some weeks later, was the day that we knew it didn't work. So this time of year is not particularly nice time, but
No.
we get through that by having Vicky and Michael Day, which usually means I go and buy a tool, and Vicky gets Thai for dinner.
I think that's such a nice thing to do, because we have our wedding anniversary and my husband's birthday days, and so is my birthday. The day before our wedding anniversary and the day after my husband's birthday and my actual birthday, I spent several birthdays actually under sedation or general anaesthetic because of IVF. So people thought I was going on holiday, but I wasn't. I was doing something else, which I think people sort of forget, I think, that you have different difficult anniversaries. But I wanted to go back to two things that you mentioned there, Michael. First, the medication, because I'm now unnervingly medication free. That's been since May. And God, it's just weird. It's very strange. Everything feels a bit brighter and bigger, and it's a bit of a scary kind of place to be. I'm not entirely sure that it's the right thing to do. I was very, very, very reluctant to do anything about that. Really reluctant to do anything. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is about anxiety, and something that was, Sarah, you will know more about this, I'm sure, than I can say properly, which is about catastrophization. I've said that right. Yeah, I know you will perhaps come back to it in a minute. But the other thing, before I forget, because I know I will forget, is about the concrete. Because I have the same thing about the stained glass window. And I know you and I and Vicky have chatted about this often. And I have a new door in my house. And I have a City and Guilds in stained glass. I did this before IVF. And when IVF came along, I stopped because I thought lead and all the chemicals, I wouldn't do it. And now I've got to make a stained glass window for this door. And I've tidied the shed. I've got the workspace set up. I managed to do that bit. Now I have to start it. And I've got to start it. And I've got to try and think about this. And then I'm going around the edges at the moment, because I've often thought whether it could be like a complete career change and I could just do this thing. And I met somebody who does stonework and thought, maybe there's something about grief and creating memorial panels and things. Anyway, can't bring myself yet to pick up a soldering iron, but next time we meet up, I'm hoping I will have picked up a soldering iron. But I know I absolutely, it's kind of a big sort of step for me, because I've suffered with weight problems because of IVF, having been largely a skinny mini all my life. That was a shock. I'm also concerned. I've suffered weight problems because I was a skinny mini all my life. And that was all down to IVF. And so a lot of my mental health issues have been dealing with that. You know, I went to the hairdressers this week and sat there in the chair, and someone had shared this on Facebook. It was, I guess, when you sit in the chair at the hairdressers and think, man, have I been ugly all my life? Because that's what hairdresser chairs do. It's this automatic ugly filter thing that they put on you to sit there for 2 hours going, oh my God. And I was like that, and I kept thinking, I've got to try hard enough. And I, rather than sat, and my husband said to me, well, think about all the things you have done, rather than berate yourself for what you haven't done. You know, you have started to sort of go running again, you're doing this, doing all sorts of things. And there are two people who I just want to give a quick thanks to, who are a lady, a friend of mine called Miranda, who has done some fantastic work and some sharing stuff on Facebook about her eating and about being a vegan, and a lady called Lizzie, who is dyspraxic like me and goes to a gym, and she runs marathons, half marathons, and I find her very inspiring. Two very important people who, they don't know this, that they are getting a shout out, they don't know that they're that inspiring, but they made a massive difference to me because I could relate to them in terms of them addressing things, health issues, addressing stuff, adulty stuff, and going, right, okay, I'm going to do this. And I think they're very important. So a lot of it, I think, about Project Mean, about how I perceive myself and my weight and the struggles I have. And again, that whole struggling with doing things because I know I can't do them because of dyspraxia has been really hard. Impacts on my worthiness, because if you can't have kids and you can't do something else. But I try and think about things I can do, you know, because dyspraxia makes you different. You do start off better. I see the world in a different way. I see it totally differently. I see it in a much more creative way than I do other stuff. You know, and when I actually use some escalators, which is very rare, but when I do, I'm like, yeah, fuck me, I've used an escalator. It's fantastic, you know. And most people just go up an escalator and just go, oh, it's an escalator. I'm just like, hey, party at the top. You know, I've got off this thing and it hasn't chewed my feet up, and I stood upright all the way.
Give me some notes next time, and I'll stand at the top with some pom-poms.
Oh, please do. Let's do that. Yay! Party, you know. If I walk down some stairs without holding a handrail, I'm like, fucking hell, I love these stairs. I love them. You know, it's amazing. And sometimes it really kind of buggers you up because I have to paint the hall, because I have this habit of when I come upstairs in the house that I've lived in for years, and they are very steep, turny stairs. They're not probably the ideal thing. Bungalows are better, frankly, but nevertheless, we have stairs. And I put my arm out at the top of the wall, and this is sort of dirt, this patch at the top of the wall irritates me to hell, because of course it's where I've come back and I put my hand on the wall, look, if you get marks on it. So now I'm going to have to paint the wall. So yeah, it's not always a win, I have to say. It really, really isn't. But sometimes it's quite handy, and I can get out with stuff and go like, oh, I don't want to do that because I've got dyspraxia. And I know actually I could probably do it perfectly well. But anyway, yeah. Catastrophization, Sarah.
Yeah, catastrophizing. So yeah. I too suffer with anxiety, and mine comes out in different ways. Catastrophizing is a really bad one for me, actually, and it's kind of, the way I explain it to people is where you're projecting too far forward into the future, but you're putting it through a negative filter. So I'll give you an example. When I gave up employment to become self-employed, everything was absolutely wonderful, and it's like, oh my God, I'm living my dream, and then I hit the skids in January, and January through to March is all the hideousness to do with all of my anniversaries, kind of condensed into one quarter year. So yeah, I hit the skids in January, and basically my anxiety came up, and it was social anxiety. I get that really bad, and it was also I have a real thing, you may not relate to this, but I have a real thing about security. So it got bad. I couldn't leave my house because I was worried that someone was going to come do something to my house, and my house is my safe space, for want of a better word. So my anxiety comes out perhaps slightly differently. But yeah, in January, basically everything, I started catastrophizing. When am I going to start earning? When am I going to do this? When am I going to get clients? When am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? And that is basically your anxiety. That is what catastrophizing is. It is every fear you've got plays out in your brain as a glorious Technicolor film. through a negative filter, and it all comes back down to what Berenice was saying about your worthiness, how worthless you feel, how you're not good enough, and that sort of thing. And that's basically my filter for most of January through March, most years, if I'm honest. My not good enough filter comes to the fore. So when you sort of talked about the worthiness, and obviously Michael has a very different take on this, I can relate to that, because I think the whole childlessness thing for me was, you're not good enough to be a mum. And it's all the anxiety just went straight in on me, and it kicks the shit out of you, basically. But sorry, cat's on the move. But I didn't go down the medical route. My doctor did offer me, is it citralopram, something like that, some sort of, he offered it to me, and he said, don't worry, he said, you won't be on it very long. And I said, well, can you define not very long for me, because I'm very funny about taking tablets. And he said, you'll be on it 6 months, you wean yourself on, wean yourself off. And I've seen a member of my family on antidepressants, and it was kind of, they described it as no black, no white, but all very grey in the middle, all sort of flatlining. And I thought, that's not really what I want. So I didn't do that. I went for counselling, and I looked up alternatives. And that isn't for everyone, and I'm not going to sit here and recommend it, because as far as I'm concerned, your body is your own. You make your own decisions. So I went off and found what worked for me. But it was no black, no white, all very grey in the middle. But it took the edge off enough so that I could function January through March, and after my hysterectomy as well. So sometimes you've got to do what's right for you, haven't you? And for me, I find counselling actually has worked very well. It's quite funny. I did have a female counsellor, and you might find this. We talked about it with Meriel, didn't we, Michael? About going to find the right counsellor for you. And I was saying I had a female counsellor last year, which was fine, but I've now got a fella. And he's really, he's so cool, honestly. He's just the embodiment of cool. He's an ex-bouncer, ex-boxer, proper alpha male. And when I went in to meet him, I thought, I'm not sure about this. And that was when I knew that I had to go and work with him, because he brought up stuff for me. But it was strange. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking about the childlessness, and I was talking about the iceberg, funnily enough. And I was chatting away, and I was getting emotional, as I do. As you've noticed this episode, I've been quite quiet because I've been like blubbing. And I look up, and I'd sort of been chatting and talking about the emotions, and I look up and he's crying. And it was the weirdest thing, offering my counsellor a tissue. Whose session is this? Comforting you. But it just took the edge off, and I think it's one of the most beautiful things to see when somebody who isn't part of our community, because he has a family, he gets it, he got it. And you know, cynics amongst you might go, well, you're paying for it, and da-da-da-da. But he understood it. He understood the pain. And for me, that was brilliant. That was priceless. And it's like, well, if I can do that, if I can put that somewhere and demonstrate it, then hopefully that will help other people, because it helped me enormously. It's like, bloody hell, this is brilliant, you understand it. And I think that's part of the problem. You don't want a pity party, you just want people to be able to walk beside you and understand, isn't it?
I think often we can stop or not want to share something because we have some negative things. You know, and in amongst all of the conversations we have, there'll be someone who will say, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be, it's God's way, or children are all they're cracked up to be. I've had all of those and more, as we all have. Michael, you may laugh, but that was from a relative. I'll tell you that one another time. I'm not going to breach people's confidentiality, but we'll...
I was laughing at Sarah because she was just going, you know,
no.
It was so all these conversations that we have with other people, and we test the waters out, and we say something, you know, and it's harder for some people, I think, than others. I can, if I say, oh, I've had IVF, failed IVF, then people will make a judgment. If I say miscarriages, people make a different judgment. Because miscarriages, I think, can make people think, oh, well, yeah, that could happen to me. IVF, for people I don't know, I'm speaking on behalf of a community I'm not part of, but I always get the impression that people don't know enough about IVF. People think it's easy. People think that, or it's complete mystery, or it's mucking about with nature, or it's I don't know what people think about it. Or they think actually mostly as what I thought. Oh, it works.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say, or when I say, I always say, well, I've had failed IVF and miscarriages. Because I've had miscarriages naturally, and I've had miscarriages as a result of IVF as well. So both. And that tends to sort of stop people taking they can make a judgment in their head, but they don't tend to make it more in vocally now. But before I'd been certain, so okay, and I've just said I'm childless, not by choice. Then you get those bingos, you know, and I have a thing on my computer. It's actually a bingo game, and I started designing this thing ages ago, you know, bingoism. So the idea of developing a board game for the community, but the idea is you have these bingos, and I think people make these judgments, and they're difficult ones, but in and amongst all of this, wherever you come from, whatever your story is, you will find somebody out there that will help you, who will be a parent. I think I do firmly believe they're there. Contentious, I know, and a lot of people will be listening to this going, you are talking absolute bullshit, Berenice, you really are. I've not found that person. But I think somewhere out there is, and it's kissing all the frogs. But when you kiss all these frogs and they stay as frogs, it is really hard, because then you start to just think, okay, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to find this person who can help me. But they are there. And it gives you a little bit of faith. I don't think you have to find them, but I think it helps you, make you feel that the world's a bit more of a balanced place and a kinder place, because I think having that them and us feeling is also really hard as well. It's very, very painful to carry that, and I've carried that. I felt immensely bitter about anyone who'd had a child. Very, very bitter about it. I got very into that zone of being bitter, and that's really hard, and a really hard place to get yourself out of. Really difficult. I think also if you have bad counselling experiences, that can also be a thing too. You need a counsellor to be as neutral as possible, I think. So yeah, Meriel's advice and her fantastic post, which is written by her in Psychology Today, wasn't it, about people who about advice for people who are counsellors, for people who are childless, is absolutely important. It needs to be viral. Absolutely needs to be viral. It really does.
She does absolutely nail it. I've and for those of you that are listening and are thinking, oh God, I don't ever want to do counselling, it is a personal choice. Meriel was at pain to emphasise that. But I've had some bad counselling, and
Me too.
Put me off. But it's the kissing frogs analogy. You need to find the right one for you. So you will, if you come up against one that's no good for you and you need that help, keep looking, because there are some wonderful counsellors out there that will be able to help you.
Yeah. It's how you tackle stuff is personal. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a counsellor for 10 years because of some. And I know I can say this. I have his authority to say this, that she experienced some child sexual abuse and also dysfunctional family, because they won't be listening to this, so it won't matter. And then of course the whole child thing as well. So we went and seen one for 10 years, and she was a fantastic woman. She would have been in her 60s when we first started seeing her, but she had experienced the death of a daughter and the death of a husband. And although they were very, very sad, you just knew that, she had the world experience to be just right for her job. And I've experienced some not so good. So I went through, when I was at work, a company I used to work for, quite a large one, a large Australian one, there was redundancies happening. And of course, I've talked about my erosion of my confidence. That really hit me hard. And so I took up the employee assistance program. And I went to see this young girl, and I'm not, who had no life experience. And here I am, a man in, my 50s, trying to explain to her, what I was going through. And, she just didn't get it. And she was sprouting from the textbook. You knew she was. Probably because I've done the majority of a psychology degree myself. So I knew she was sprouting from the textbook. That wasn't a very good one. So like you say, you've got to find the one that's right for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, the one I was referring to is after my miscarriage. And I went, and she knew, so I had a bit of a chat with her, told her what it's about. And then as I go to meet her, it's in her house. We walk up the stairs, and there's all these pictures of her children as I'm walking up the stairs. So I thought, oh, this isn't going to go well. And I sit down. And
God.
yeah, it was. So I was already defensive, and when I'm under pressure, my defense mechanism just go like a barrier, goes straight up. So I was already a little bit tetchy when I walked in the room. And then the first thing out of her mouth, or one of the first things out of her mouth, is, thought about going on antidepressants. I was just like, for God's sake, this is not, I'm here to talk. I'm not here to, I didn't want to go on medication, basically. I wanted to feel it. I didn't want to mask it. It was important for me to kind of feel the loss. And so saying that, and literally, I think I don't know why, but I went for 2 or 3 sessions. And then in the end, I went, yeah, I'm fine. And she said, well, or maybe I'll see you again. Not bloody likely. You're not even on the same, never mind the same page. You're not in the same book, the same library as me.
Yeah.
So very unlikely. So yeah, not a great experience. But yeah, I think talking about, Berenice was talking about IVF and miscarriages and stuff. I was talking to my counsellor about miscarriages, and he said that never has he come across a more euphemistic term for something that is just absolutely destroys you. And counsellor shared a few things, but it's just, I think it is a euphemistic term, isn't it? And I think when people are going through IVF now, me and my partner didn't do IVF. I'd had a lot of procedures. I've got a lot of scarring across my abdomen. Got a lot of scarring inside my body, but obviously I can't see that. And so the thought of me doing IVF, and I was at rock bottom, so I had nothing left to give. There was no way that I was going to be able to do IVF. But the number of people that have turned around to me, and it's the judgment. Why haven't you done IVF? Why haven't you done this, that, and the other? And it's just assumed that it's an easy thing to do, but you have to have mental resources in order to face the fact that you're not going to have children, or that you need assistance. Then you have to have a mental resource and capacity to go through IVF. And what if that doesn't work? And I just don't think that, I think outside of our community, people don't realise how resilient we have to be individually. I don't think there's enough acknowledgement.
Totally agree. I'm going to share a story with you. Just a couple of weeks ago, actually, I had the occasion to go and see Vicky's brother and his family, and no, please don't get me wrong. They're lovely people. They're very supportive, but let's just say they're not from our community. And talking to them both, Vicky's brother was a typical guy, just sat there and listened, didn't say much. But his wife, let's call her Susan, just in case she does listen to this. Now Susan is a lovely girl. She's the warmest of hearts. But we started talking about the podcast and the community, and so she's done the, have you ever thought of adoption? have you ever, fostering, that sort of thing. And I said, look, here's something you don't know. Going through IVF and the roller coaster that creates is tough. And each one of those dips gets lower and lower and lower, which you've got to climb. You've got to try and climb yourself out of every time they say, "Oh, sorry, it didn't work." So I said, look, your sister had days where she couldn't get out of bed because she was so depressed. 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd come home from work and the curtains, as we've talked about before, were closed because she couldn't get out of bed because she's so depressed. Now, so that they wouldn't have known that because that's not something we had shared within the family. So I said, now think about that, and then think about how did we have the psychological resilience to then go through an adoption process that here in Australia is very harrowing, and there's no guarantee. So we were broken. So how can you do that? And you could see the light go, oh, wow, I've never thought about it like that. So, of course, did you ever think about fostering? I said, well, okay, just told you that we were broken. And you've got your 2 boys there. So you're coming from the point where, you could invite someone into your home and look after them for a little while. And, you know, if they need to leave your family, it won't be too bad because you've got your 2 boys over here. But think about the fact that you haven't got anything and you're given, this human to look after, and then it's taken away. And the lights come on, just bing. Like you say, Sarah, the people outside of the community just do not understand the depths of this grief and, where it takes you.
No. Oh, God, it makes me so angry when people go around, have you thought about this? Have you thought about... Yes, I thought about nothing fucking but trying to get children. I'm gonna have thought about all the options. When someone sort of said to me, do you think you tried hard enough because you didn't have IVF? We did our research. We didn't just sack it off as, no, we're not going to do that. We did our research. My body was so damaged, the likelihood of it happening was single figures. So why, you've got to question whether you put yourself through that. And I've got to admit, I'll put my hand up, I am batshit crazy on hormones. It was either, do we pursue this relentlessly for children and we continue the relentless cycle of hope and disappointment, or do I sacrifice my marriage? And that's what it came down to. And with the adoption as well, we started looking into that. And I was more invested, I'll be honest with Jim. My other half was a bit like, not sure, we'll think about it. But once I started looking into it, I was like, again, there's no guarantees. And there's that, you need to have this almost limitless resource of resilience. And I didn't have it. I was, I was fucked.
I know someone who's been through the adoption and it did work for them, but had been through other ways of trying alternative parenting, looking at different solutions at IVF as well. And God, the journey that she went through, and she lost a few friends on the way because ultimately they did end up, I hate to say the word successful because it isn't, because it's so hard to do. And it was so sad to see those friends drop away because she had, it's only, I'm trying to think how long I've known her with her daughter, and that must be 2 years. And it's only this last weekend that they actually felt they could have a party to celebrate her being in their family. And through all of that, she's had to live with this idea that at any point it can end. And going back to what you said about not doing IVF, I've heard this come up before as a theme. Is there a kind of like a sort of a judgment within our communities about that? Do we have these kind of conversations in our communities where, okay, well, you know, do I think, for example, that you didn't try hard enough, Sarah? Well, that's just absolute bollocks, because no, I absolutely, just like we said about counselling, it's utterly individual, and it's utterly personal, you know. And Kenny would not, my other half would not have taken IVF as an option. It wasn't something he felt he wanted to do, particularly after the first time, because I had ovarian hyper, blah de blah, whatever it is. I kind of tried to forget the words, OHSS. So I was quite ill, and all the other times. But then you end up at the point where you have all these eggs, and then you keep going and going and going. So again, another thing as well about that is people make these judgments. So why didn't you just stop the IVF? Or why didn't you just stop it and then try adoption? We can't stop IVF halfway through when you have these cells in a freezer, and one of those may work. You know, I had 13 embryos, 27 eggs, 13 embryos. So that's how many I use in all the cycles. And of course, as they defrost them, of course, they die off. But there was one left. And anyone that's followed me on Walk in Our Shoes knows about the story of the last embryo. You can go and read it over there. It's fine if you want to. And that was my choice. And Kenny more reluctantly so. Adoption wasn't for us because we have an age gap, and we were publicly told, go for it, it's fine. Because in the UK, publicly, there's no upper age limit. We went to a thing about it. They had like a presentation about it. And I said to the guy at the end of it, I said, look, generally, hand on heart, this is my story. This is what I've been through. Will we be judged by age? Well, we can't say that. No, I want you to spit it out to you, absolutely, because I cannot cope with the shit of going through all of the IVF and then going through adoption and going through the motions, and everyone going, yeah, it's all fine, because that's the PC thing to do. When actually the truth is that you're judging me, and you've already made that judgment because we've got an age gap. And the general feedback I had was that actually, if you were on your own, you'd have more chance than you do with your husband, even though actually he's a perfectly good father. He'd be a brilliant father. He'd be a much better father than I would be a mother. I absolutely know that. You know, children migrate to him like he's some kind of like magnet, which makes it all the more difficult. But he just is that person. You know, dogs migrate to me, cats, and he gets children. That's kind of how it works. And we would have been fine. And I think we would have made great parents. But I think that it was too much to go through. So everyone goes through these kind of choices. And I guess I was fortunate. I met Kenny when I was younger. And I wasn't in that position where I was childless through circumstance. But I think childless by circumstance is also really hard. I know friends of mine are in that position. You know, they're in their 30s. The clock is ticking very, very quickly. And they're in that position where, what do I throw something at IVF and hope it works and sperm donor? But then I'm renting a flat. I don't actually own a flat because house property, the house buying system in the UK is so screwed, and so expensive. Certainly where I live anyway, it's really ridiculously expensive. So you have all this different, our social narrative has changed so much that to say in our community that we judge each other for trying or not trying something hard enough would be absolutely hugely unfair. And I think for me personally, hugely objectionable, because actually our lives these days aren't like they were when my parents were around or our grandparents were around. It's different, you know. We don't have that access to things. And with millennials coming up as well, their lives are so different. It's so sporadic. We're not that same person anymore. I think we're that last generation that had that pressure to conform in the way that perhaps our parents did and our grandparents did. I think I'm sure that there's other people, probably Robin Hadley could probably put more light on that. I'm going off on an academic kind of like rant now, but there is that whole life. I think it changes an awful lot for us. And there's an awful lot of pressure in that. So I don't think anyone is right or wrong. We just make personal choices, just like we do in how we tackle our mental health and what we decide to do. It's very, very different.
Definitely. But
Shall we move on to some new stuff? I'm just worried about Michael having to edit all
Yeah,
this.
this is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I'm sitting there thinking, fuck, how am I going to do this?
I know. Maybe this is one that you need to train us to do, and we'll try and do it.
Yeah. You need to inflict it on us so that we can relate and we can start, editing ourselves.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's the fact that when you're editing, you're looking for that point where you can go, right, I can cut that out and move. But sometimes you can't do that.
I think we let this run. We let it run, Michael, because I think people will want to. And what I'll do is when we go through it, or if you go through it, and you can see points where we start to talk about my mental health, your mental health, Sarah's mental health, whatever, and we've got the time blocks, then I'll do that, and people can go into separate bits of it. That's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Use the show notes to do it. But I ought to do the newsy thing and a couple of shout outs, perhaps.
Yeah. So what I'd like to say too is, and I'll try and do this without crying. I can feel it coming already. Oh God. Okay, get yourself together. Thank you both for telling me your story. It's been really. And I don't want to say nice because it's never good. It's never easy, but I just feel closer to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I knew this was going to be a bloody hard episode, but geez.
It's been harder than I didn't think that I would go. I thought I'd probably be okay. I'm kind of so used to holding it together that actually it was really, really hard.
Yeah, you shared an awful lot there. I mean, there's more. There's so many bits that chimed with it, and I think that's probably why I was in bits listening to it.
There's probably an awful lot more I'd like to say about it, but I'm conscious that there's no direct route from weirdly getting dressed and oddly putting makeup on. Maybe I wanted to be found kind of in a decent state. I don't know. It's that whole thing of like, you're going to go, I always put nice knickers on. Why? And now I recount it, I think, oh my God, how absolutely mad was I? But there you go. But what I will do is try and write a blog post after this episode, and sort of things that kind of help me as well and stuff, because there's a lot about that, and it wasn't a direct route, and because it never is. It's never linear. It's like a big tangly kind of thing. There's never kind of like A to B. It's A, then B, C, and back to A again, and all over the place. But there is sort of stuff that you can do, and I'll share a picture of my dog, but everyone knows my dog, I think, now. So new stuff in our podcast in the toolkit, which if you have not downloaded the toolkit, you can go to our website www.thefullstoppod.com and you can download the toolkit. In that, we mentioned we're going to change our episode formats a little bit. So the idea is that we want to make it more community based. That is to say, we want to hear from people who perhaps have never been on a podcast before. Maybe you don't even have a blog yet. Maybe you're just thinking, I've got something I want to say. And maybe you don't want to say the words. Maybe you'd like us to say them for you, because that's what we can do as well. And you can be in absolute confidence. But if you want a safe and supportive environment to share a story, then that's what we are here to do. We want to hear about all the people that people have never heard of before, who are doing amazing stuff, who are struggling, who are looking for help. You don't have to have a life-changing story, but you may just have something that you think might help somebody else, or something you want to talk about that may benefit us as presenters as well. So this is the newsy part, or the community bit, the community news from the podcast. We wanted to share a couple of shout outs, and that is that World Childless Week happened at the time of broadcasting 2 weeks ago. It'll be about a month, I think, by the time we launched this episode, and lots of stuff came up on that. So we would like you to go over to the website worldchildlessweek.net. You can see Michael and I are champions there, and Sarah wrote some fabulous stuff as well, so we've all contributed to that. One of the champions is Christina Archetti, and she has set up a new community, if you are in Norway, called Other Ways, with Cecile Hoxmarks. I hope I have pronounced your name correctly, Cecile. That is happening. You can go to Christine. You can find Christine Archetti on Facebook and on social media, and I'll pop up some links onto her website on our blog as well, on the Full Stop. We also wanted to let you know about a lovely lady called Emma who contacted us. She's not ready to talk to us just yet, but she has a beautiful, beautiful blog that's just been set up, Chronic Mama in Waiting. So Chronic Mama in Waiting blog.home.blog. Again, we will pop up a link to that too, so you can share it. She got in touch to tell us that she started very recently to share her story, and it's incredibly moving, and we'd really like you to go over to her website, and I hope that one day we'll be able to bring you her story in person. But as all of these things, there's never any pressure whatsoever to do that. We absolutely appreciate it takes time. It's taken me 10 years to talk about my story today. The other mention that we wanted to make, something we haven't talked about in our recovery stories and how we've coped with mental health, but something someone wanted to point out is Carolyn. And Carolyn is a friend of mine. I've met her several times. She's an absolute love. I adore her, and she's got a dog as well, a lovely rescue, and you can find out more about her as well. Probably, I'm sure Derek must be on her website, and her website is Cantiamo, and cantiamomusic.com. Again, we will pop up a link to that. She's a music teacher. She's also childless, not by choice, and she advocates singing for well-being, and she sets up workplace choirs. So if you were inspired by was it Gareth Malone, wasn't it, the workplace class, then she's your woman. If you want to do singing and music teaching, she's incredibly talented. She also does flute teaching as well, and I do believe that her lovely dog howls and sings as well, so she has to put him in another part of her house when she has a student, which just makes me laugh my socks off. So a massive thank you to her for pointing that out, and do go and check her out. And that's our community news. If you want to be part of it, to say, just drop us a line, social media, website, just track us down. You can also befriend us individually on Facebook and follow us on Twitter under our individual accounts. We really don't mind. Just come and check us out, or Sarah at afterthestorm as well.com.
As you can see, that was a tough session for us all, but we thought it was important for the entire conversation to be used, as we firmly believe mental health should not be minimised in any way. Our hope is that somewhere in there you found a connection with us and feel less isolated. So please, don't hold back if you wish to contact us at www.thefullstoppod.com. And we really did mean, if you want to contact us individually, feel free to do so. Please don't be shy. Now, it's time for our guest, the lovely Meriel Whale, who among many things is a counsellor who is also childless not by choice.
Right, hello everyone. So welcome to our, I hesitate to use the word interview, Meriel, but it's okay. We're talking with Meriel Whale today, who's a specialist counsellor for our community, for the Childless Not by Choice community. You've been counselling way before this, weren't you? Is it 10 years, did you tell me?
It's 10 years since I graduated.
10 years since you graduated. So you've kind of done other stuff, but decided to specialise with our community, which is amazing. So we're talking about all things mental health and how it affects our community. So I guess the starting point is, what's your experience like? How do you experience working with our community?
I absolutely love working with the Childless Not by Choice community as a counsellor. That's not to say that I don't feel extremely moved and sad by people's stories, because I do. And I constantly find myself feeling moved by what I hear. And if I didn't, then that would be alarming. Because, one of the important things about being a counsellor is to have your humanity in the room at all times. And to really hear and understand these stories, and hearing them and understanding them means being moved by them, because the stories that I hear on a weekly basis are deeply moving. It's quite an emotional job in many ways. But I'm in my counselling mode So I manage those emotions so that I can be my own emotions, so that I can be 100% present for my clients, for their stories and their journeys. And that's really important. So yes, even though some of the time what I hear is deeply moving, I do love my job. I love working with this client group, in which I include myself, because I have gone through a childlessness journey of my own. And it feels deeply satisfying and rewarding to be able to work with a community that's often been neglected in the mental health sphere, and in fact has often not had their stories heard in every sphere, not just in counselling and mental health, but across many, many different spheres of people's lives.
I think it's obviously I'm a trainee counsellor,
Yeah.
but I also have counselling myself, and I have found it difficult, I think. My current counsellor is absolutely incredible. He's I think he's terrific. He's like an alpha male, ex-boxer, bouncer. And I looked at him, I thought, you're not going to get this, but he got it. And I think for me, it's been quite a unique experience, because I've worked with other counsellors around this topic and felt perhaps misunderstood, or I don't know, it's hard to explain. Perhaps they've not understood the pain of this journey. So I think having someone from our community actually doing this work is pretty amazing, really.
Yeah, I've had counsellors say very tactless things to me over the years. And that's one of the things that I can guarantee, that there will hopefully not be any bingos in my sessions. I am not going to say to my clients, have you thought about trying X, Y, or Z to help you to have a child? Because I know that we have all thought about these things, all the different things that we could possibly do. We've thought about them, we may have tried quite a few of them, and I respect the fact that when people come to me, they're not coming to me for me to offer them practical solutions about how to have a child. And that's not what I do. And that's not what I would ask other counsellors to do either. And I think that's really important. So yeah, I've had some negative experiences, and I really hope that people who come to me for counselling will not have those kind of experiences. And that by writing blogs about counselling people who are childless not by choice, I'm hoping that other counsellors will read them and think about how they work with childless people as well. I think that's really important.
I saw one you wrote top 10 tips, wasn't it, for people working from our community?
Yes.
And I thought it was really useful, actually, because I think some of the things that we think are obvious totally bypass other counsellors, I think. But it is the bingo. I've had the bingos. You see, for the love of God,
Yeah. No,
I don't need to hear this.
In the counselling room, we shouldn't be hearing those bingos.
No.
Counsellors really need to focus on where their clients are at and what's going on for their clients, and to completely accept and validate everything that is going on for them, and not try and offer solutions, but just be there with them, hear their story, understand it as much as is humanly possible, but just being present and accepting and validating whatever's happening. So important.
It must be hard when sometimes you see something so painful that you kind of think, actually, I'm affected by this.
It can be difficult, but what I find is that two things help me with that. One is that I hope and believe that I'm making a difference to that person by being present for them and putting my own feelings aside so that I can be 100% present. That helps me stay really focused. And I found that because I'm a long way through my own healing journey, that I'm affected on a human level by the stories I hear. I'm not affected on a personal level as much, because as I've done a lot of work myself, and I'm now living my plan B, and very happily living my plan B. So even if somebody comes with a story that's quite similar to my own, I find that I can be with it and work with it. And I also have clinical supervision once a month, which is where I can talk about my response to my clients, my feelings, and make sure that the work that I'm doing with them is 100% as good as I can make it. So clinical supervision is really important support for the counsellor, and that really helps me. And if I need it, if I'm being troubled or affected by things, I get support. talk to people, talk to my friends, talk to my family. Not about my clients, obviously.
Confidentiality.
but about, yeah, exactly. That's completely confidential. But I talk about my own feelings and make sure that I get support when I need it. And because I've got lots of friends who are also childless, not by choice, and lots of friends who have kids but who still get it, and that's brilliant.
Well, that's really good, isn't it? I think that's really important. So when it comes to, I mean, not everyone is going to be in a position of being able to be ready for counselling. It takes a lot of guts, I think, to admit that you need help. Yeah. So is there anything that people can do to help themselves maybe get ready or at least be able to support themselves if they're not able or willing yet to get counselling?
Yeah, I think there are lots of things that people can do. I would definitely recommend getting involved with one of the childless community groups across the world, and there are more and more childless community groups now being formed across the world. Some on different platforms. There's some on Facebook. I'm sure there's things on Twitter, although I find Twitter a bit of a mystery. But there are face-to-face meetups and groups. So yeah, I think getting involved with the community and being able to meet with other people in a similar position and who can just hear your story and go, yeah, I get it, I understand it, you're not weird, there's nothing wrong with you, you're not mad, it's all totally normal, you're fine, you just be part of a community, I think is really important. For a lot of people, it's not just human community that makes a difference. Animal community is really important, and for lots of childless people, having pets is a really important way to get support. If you're not an animal person, don't worry about it. But if you are, it's really great. And I know lots of people find their pets are a massive source of support. And counselling it's got to be the right time for you. So if you feel like it might be, but you're not sure, try it. Contact a counsellor. Most counsellors will offer free or reduced price initial sessions. So just try it, see if it feels right. And if it doesn't go, okay, this didn't feel right, I'll either try somebody else, or this isn't where I'm at just now. I need to honour my own story, my own journey until I am ready for counselling. And that's, people have to do it in their own time. Journaling can be something that really helps people. Blogging, podcasting, all these things can be really healing. There's lots of stuff out there that can be really, really healing. And I've written quite a few blogs on different aspects of healing, either with counselling or without it, and they're on my website. So there's stuff on there that people could look at if they wanted to. But you don't have to go on the website. This isn't a pitch.
Don't worry, we'll share the website in the notes, so don't worry. But I think that's a really good point, actually. The point you made there was maybe that counsellor isn't right for you. All counsellors are different, and I will admit I have been to a counsellor that wasn't for me. We didn't meet each other on the same plane, if you like. We just weren't compatible. So it might not be that you're not ready. It might be that you need to go and find somebody that gets you, that's on your level. So even if you meet somebody, you think, oh, flipping heck, no, that was not for me, then try again. Because if you are feeling that you need that sort of support, then it's about finding the right person that connects with you.
It's a personal relationship like any other.
Totally.
We don't get on with we don't want to be friends with everybody in the world. We don't want to be romantic partners with everybody in the world. It's the same with counsellors. It's a personal relationship, even though it's also professional. But counsellors, as I said earlier, are bringing their humanity into the room. They're being real people in the room, in the counselling room. Or in my case, because I do a lot of online counselling, in the counselling internet dimension, counsellors are bringing their real selves. And if people do want to hook up to kind of support groups across the world, I know that the World Childless Week website has a list of different support groups that people can have a look at, and there's lots of different ones. So hopefully there'll be something there for everybody.
Again, we can share that one. So we'll put it in the notes for everyone if you're listening and you're interested in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it really, isn't it? I mean, I'll be honest, put my hands up. The first time I thought, oh, I need some help, and I thought, oh, I need to go and get counselling. I think, I don't know, maybe it might be a British thing, but I think we're a little bit behind perhaps the USA, where it's not such a stigma to go and get help when you need help. So I think we're a little bit behind, but it is a huge step admitting to yourself that you need help. But it's, no one needs to know. And as you say, it's a professional, personal relationship.
Yeah.
Nothing will ever be shared in any circumstances. So it's completely safe.
It is. What happens in the counselling room or the internet, if you're doing it online, stays in the counselling room. Confidentiality is one of the key tenets of counselling, and it's a really important one. Really important.
Is.
And that's why I will never talk about, if somebody says to me, what do childless people go through? I will never talk about it from the point of view of my clients. I will only talk about my own story. And there may be universal aspects to my own story and my own feelings, but that's all I'm equipped to talk about, is what happened to me, what I went through, not what happened or what my clients went through, because that's their stories. I don't talk about them.
Well, as you say, it's their story. We can listen to it, we can take it on board, but we can't ever relate to it 100%.
No.
So
the only stories we can tell are our own. And I think it's really important for childless people, if they want to tell their stories in their own words, and not to have them filtered by other people. I think we need, if we want to tell our stories in our own words. And I think that's really important for any minority group, actually.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think that's a good place to end, isn't it, Michael?
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
From the Bates Hotel.
Yeah.
Firstly, Muriel, it's wonderful to finally have some time with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've exchanged messages, and that's been really nice. But it's really great to finally talk.
Yeah.
Now, having been someone, both Vicky and I sitting on the psychologist couch for 10 years.
Yeah.
I'd like to get both of you actually, the way that I think about this is an endpoint, and the endpoint would be to be more resilient.
Yes.
Psychologically resilient. So I'd like to get both your sort of views on that. How people can do that. What are some of the things that help with that resilience?
Yeah. I think there are lots of things that can help build resilience, and not all of them involve going and seeing a counsellor. That's not right for everybody. Mental health and mental well-being is broad, and lots of things can support people with it. I think sometimes it's down to our attitudes about what we've experienced, because some people who are childless not by choice, and I would include myself in this, in fact, as I said earlier, I can only really ever talk about my own story, experience huge amounts of shame. And I think coming to a place where we recognise that we are good enough as we are, making that cognitive shift from I'm not good enough to I am good enough is an important one. And reading and listening to other people and talking to other people can really help with that. So I often think that resilience is not so much what we do, it's how we allow our thoughts to change, and how we allow our thoughts to become more generous, more compassionate, kinder to ourselves and to other people. And moving from shame to self-acceptance, moving from blaming to forgiving ourselves and other people. I think one of the really important parts of my journey was when I forgave myself and I forgave the people around me, and I said to myself, we all did the best we could. It was a really difficult situation, and we all did the best we could, and I stopped blaming. But a lot of resilience is just letting it happen, letting what's happening inside you happen, getting support when you need it, but not pushing it down or resisting it in any way. And that's really hard, because nobody wants to feel these horrible feelings, but I do think they're better out than in.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for me, I'm probably not as far along on the journey as yourself and Michael. And I think for me, there's been a few turning points, and I think shame is the biggest one, because you do feel quite ashamed that you can't have children. You know, it's not even a question of being able to hide away. You know, there's always that question, isn't there? It's one of the bingo questions. So, do you have children? And there's no hiding.
No.
And you can pretend that you didn't want them, but you have to, I think, get to the position that you are comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
And that for me has been a big issue, because mine was infertility, and I've had so many different things go on that getting comfortable in my own skin has been a massive challenge. It's still something that every now and again causes me problems, but I think it's learning to communicate with yourself. So journaling, we talked about that before. Getting comfortable with the emotions. So if like me, you're a processor, I'm a total processor. Something will happen, right? I need to process that. So I will go and journal and work my way through it in my own time. As I said, I do get counselling, because not just because I'm training, but also because I need it. I'm somebody that goes non-communicative when I'm under pressure, and I've worked very hard to come away from that. And I think for our community being invisible or shut down, we need to start finding our words, our language, and talking about it. And that could be, as Meriel has said, going out and talking to people face to face, finding your tribe. Or it could be going on forums. It could be just journaling to yourself and getting comfortable. There's so many different things you can do, and it very much depends on who you are, how you process, and how you feel about you.
Very personal, isn't it?
It is very personal, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? You try and lump it all in, and you can't, because it's so unique. Everyone's grief is different, everyone's experience is different. It just so happens that we're all childless, not by choice.
What's helped you, Michael, do you think, to be more resilient over the years?
I would definitely say being vocal. I would say that not always being able to tell our story. Someone asked me once. They said, "Why do you do that? Why do you open yourself up to to this?" I said, "Well, that means that something. They sort of say that someone would have something against me. This is in a male-dominated steel industry." And I said, "You know what? If everyone knows what I'm going through, then there's nothing to hide behind. There's nothing. I don't get what you mean, but I have the belief. That's the word I'm looking for. I have the belief that the more you talk about it, the more you build resilience, because you're almost, and I know you two will understand this, you're desensitizing yourself in that to your story, to the emotions that sit around your story. And then 10 years on the psychologist's couch was good. That was another part of that. It taught both Vicky and I how to actually talk to each other properly. And we have this little saying between us that when we talk about the right stuff. And that's where we are today.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that there's something about being heard and being witnessed that's really important. And I know that there's a quote from Jodie Day's book, which I think kind of sums it up in many ways, where she says that grief heals us, but we cannot do it alone. We cannot wait it out. Time does not heal, grieving heals. But it cannot heal until it is witnessed and held jointly with great tenderness in the heart and soul of another. And I think that other could be a counsellor, could be a friend, could be a colleague, but having someone to witness and hold that story, that grief, with great tenderness and great love can be really healing. And then if you can offer yourself that tenderness and love, then I think that's wonderful. Actually, and that's why I find that quote really important and really sort of informs my work as a counsellor and as a friend and a family member. It informs my work, it informs my life actually in lots of ways.
So you have been listening to Sarah Lawrence, Michael Hughes and me, Berenice Smith, talking about mental health. Our next episode is going to be called Fuck Festivity. Yes, we're doing a sweary one. And the reason we're doing that is because we know that Christmas, oh my God, it's hard. It's so difficult. Thanksgiving is hard all around the world. People do all this stuff and they all get all family blah, and it's hard. And we thought, oh, we'll do something about Plan B. We'll do something about this, about that. We had a long old chat this morning, came up with lots and lots of swear words, and we decided on fucking festivities. So yeah. We just want to hear from you. What do you do for your festivities? Do you do something different? Do you disappear somewhere like I do? Do you deal with it? Do you wing it? Do you wing it and you feel bad, and do you want some help with that? Tell us, let us know. How do you deal with all the festivity stuff that comes along? Swearing is most welcome. We don't mind. Tell us. We want to know.
Thank you for staying the distance. And we will leave Meriel's contact details in the show notes, just in case you feel that she's someone you want to talk to. Now don't forget, we have a presence on the Trinity, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and of course the website www.thefullstoppod.com. And lastly, it's important for us to let you know you are not alone.